T-minus 1 minute. T-minus 30 seconds. We are go for launch. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to Kennedy Space Center's Safety and Health Days. I am Dustin Kamak, and I will be your host for today's event. In celebration of Women's History Month, we have partnered with the Kennedy Network of Women, ERG, to bring you today's panel on generational perspectives. I'm very excited to hear what I'm sure will be an amazing discussion. Before we get to today's program, I do have a few housekeeping slides that I need to go over. Give me a second as I get this going here. So first off, as you are already aware, we are streaming today's program via YouTube Live. Closed captioning is available using YouTube's closed captioning feature, and you can find that toggle in the lower right-hand corner of the video player as shown on this screen. We also encourage you to ask and send us any questions you may have via YouTube's chat feature. The chat window is located on the right side of the screen, as shown on this slide. If for some reason that chat is not available to you, you can always send us an email at ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov. Again, that's ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov. These questions may be used during this panel discussion. However, we might not have time to get to all of those questions. This session is being recorded and will be made available for internal replay about a week after this broadcast. And lastly, we are clearly in this virtual environment using several technologies to bring you this content. And while we've made every effort to mitigate technical difficulties, we do ask for your patience should something arise. With all of that said, let's get this program started. Give me 1 second here as I load up another slide deck. One moment here. Okay. One moment. I've got a lot of windows open. Okay, so as mentioned, today's discussion is on generational perspectives. So in order to help frame this topic and to make sure that we all have the same kind of reference points for this discussion, I've put together some slides that will kind of go over Kennedy's generational breakdown and some of the in general assumptions that we can make about each generation to help us with this discussion. So this slide that you're seeing is a little busy, but we'll get through it. I'll explain it all. First off, this information is as of July of 2020, so it's not quite a year old, and I do feel that it's still relevant and valid. So in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a breakdown of the demographics of age. Our most junior employee, as of July of 2020, was 19 years old. Our most senior was 80, which puts our average at about 46 years old. I know for me that's it kind of breaks my heart because I like to be above average, but this tells me, based on these numbers, that I'm below average, and honestly, I'm okay with that for right now. In a few years, I can claim to be above average, but for right now, I'm good with that. The left-hand side, you'll see the big numbers and the breakdowns of the dates, shows where we stand at Kennedy as far as our generational spread. Now, these numbers do vary depending on your source. And so these numbers, the year ranges don't necessarily add up, again, depending on your source. You'll also hear these terms called microgenerations scattered throughout. Microgeneration would be like the exennials that lives somewhere between Generation X and Generation Y. And that's where I feel like I fit in the most, as an exennial in that microgeneration. The lower right-hand corner, you'll see this information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. By 2020, by last year, 50% of all U.S. workers will be millennials. So if you look at that graph, you can see this trend. Our older generations, the traditionalists and the silent generation, are denoted by this yellow bar, and you can see that trend decreasing over time, as contrasted by the newest generation, what we call Gen 2020, denoted by the purple line. You can see that bar is growing as the years have passed. It just makes sense. As people start to retire and move out of the workforce, new folks come in. So this trend is kind of a natural trend that we see. This next slide here, it's another busy one. I won't read everything in here, but this gives kind of a breakdown, again, an in general breakdown of the values that each generation holds dear. So I'll use this as an example. Look at the left-hand column, the silent generation, versus the right-hand column, Gen Z. So in general, what the silent generation values is honor, discipline, sacrifice, hard work, follow the rules, don't rock the boat. Now compare that to the right-hand column in Gen Z. They value optimism and flexibility. They're multitaskers. Technology is important. Processing information at the speed of light. Motivated by constant stimulation. Very vast differences in those two columns, but neither one of them are right or wrong. They're just different, and that's okay. That's the whole point of these generational differences, is that we are different. We have grown up with different experiences, different technologies. So this leads us into this next slide. How do those generations differ? What should we think about in context of when we think about these generations? So within all of them, family structure and influence, education, work ethic, communication style, very important, work-life balance, financial behavior, the use of technology, expectations. These are all the different categories that we can think about as we go through this discussion on how they differ between the generations. So this leads, again, naturally to this next question. What are the benefits of understanding these differences? Well, more effective communication, which leads to fewer misunderstandings. I think that's important in the world that we live in the jobs that we do. It's very important from a safety standpoint to not have misunderstandings and to have clear, effective communication. Understanding these differences also helps increase personal competency in communication and management. Better formed expectation, better understanding of the motives within those generations, increased productivity and teamwork, and more importantly, my personal opinion, inclusivity within the workspace. This last slide, I left it in here because I thought it was cute, and it's a neat juxtaposition of the generations. On the left side, you see an older person saying, "It's been a typical day. I Skyped grandkids, Twittered a new recipe, and Facebooked my daughter." That graphic challenges your perceptions of what generations do. Compared to the right-hand column, where you have a young lady saying, "Dad, you can read all about my day on my blog." That illustrates how technology has become very important to the younger generation, the younger crowds. So with everything that I just kind of blitzed through quickly, because I do want to get through this and now into our discussion, the main takeaway from these slides that I just showed is this right here, that within the 5 generations, they include individuals with different ideas, different values, different ways of getting things done, and different ways of communicating. Different is neither wrong or right, it's just different, and that's okay. Understanding these differences, and here's the key, understanding these differences will help our NASA family grow as an organization and help us individually grow as people. So with that said, I am done with these slides. Give me a moment here to unload them. There we go. So now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of our presentation here, our panel discussion. So it's within the spirit of that last slide that I showed you, the spirit of understanding these differences, that we will move into these questions that we have. Remember, you can always submit a question to us in the YouTube chat room, or you can email us at ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov. Again, we might not be able to get to all those questions, but we will certainly try. So if I could have our panelists come on screen, turn on your cameras, I would like to introduce everybody. So I'll give a few moments here as everyone starts to fire up their cameras. Excellent. So I am just going to start naming these names and have everyone just kind of wave. So welcome, Heather Bray, Samantha Beon, Barbara Kennedy, Allison Tankersley, Nicole Bellado, Sarah Pham, Dara Toma, and Hortense Diggs. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Women's History Month, and I really wanted to focus in on the amazing women of Kennedy. So thank you all so much for joining us for this Generational Perspectives panel. Does anyone have any opening words that you would like to say? A welcome or just a hi? Feel free.
Sure. Looking forward to the conversation today, and yeah, stoked to see where it goes from here. Thanks for having us up here, Dustin.
Absolutely, Barbara. Thank you for that. It's definitely my pleasure. So we're just going to jump right into this. I'm looking forward to hearing what all the generations have to say about these questions that we have here. So I'm going to jump right in, and we're going to have a question based on values. Let me pull this up real quick. Okay, so NASA recently updated our core values and added inclusion. I would like to hear your thoughts on what inclusion means to you from your generational perspective. I would also like to know where you think this kind of importance on inclusion is going to take our agency into the future. So I'm just going to open up for anyone. I'll start to call on people.
Sure, I'll hop in there real quick. Again, my name is Barbara Kennedy. I am in the millennials age group, and I think this new value is incredibly important. So inclusion means questioning the things that have always been done the way they've always been done, questioning the reason behind what we're doing, and realizing that not just the processes, but the way that we interact with each other needs to be communicated in a way that resonates with all of us. So when an SES is talking to us during an all hands, they need to make sure that their language resonates with all of us, right? All of the different generations, and that it is inclusive across the board. So yeah, I think that's really important. And then on the other side of this, right, as folks that come in early career, we need to realize that we're speaking across the board. So we've heard all these great things coming out of college on how this is the new way to do this, and this is the way that, the industry is going, and realizing that some folks have been doing this for 30 years or 40 years, and their knowledge is important, it's valuable, and we need to be listening to it as well. So coming together and figuring out that communication gap is invaluable across the board. Thank you.
Yeah, great input. I really appreciate that. Allison, I'd like to hear your perspective on inclusion.
I was going to go, but I didn't know if you wanted both millennials at once. I'm Allison, also representing the millennials. And I think that just now more than ever, we're seeing a push for people to really champion inclusion. I think it's something that, there's definitely been people pushing for it this whole time, but now more so than ever, as the younger generations come in, it's something that we've been really raised with from the beginning to be inclusive of others. And so we're really pushing forward to make sure that it's happening, with both early career people and also for hiring people who may be changing careers, and making sure that we're making those decisions with inclusion in mind.
Yeah, good points. Hortense, if I could call on you from your perspective of being of the older generation, where do you think inclusion fits in with what we're doing right now?
So Dustin, I definitely agree with everything Allison has said, that, there's a big focus on it now. But one of the things that my generation values that I definitely resonate with is teamwork. And you cannot have teamwork without inclusion. And I just believe that it is so important that we recognize that we have to actively include people, whether that's asking their opinion, getting their thoughts, whatever it is, we got to actively do that. And in regards to why is it important to us here at NASA, because we value our people, and if we're not including them, we're not showing them that we value their creativity and anything else that they have to bring to the table. So I really think from my personal perspective, to have a value where you value your people, you must be inclusive. And I think they just go hand in hand. And so, I think inclusive is a part of teamwork. And if you're really serious about teamwork, you will go out of your way to make sure you're including everyone on your team.
Great points, Hortense. Yeah, I totally agree about you can't have teamwork without inclusion. To me, that seems intuitive, but that might not seem intuitive to everyone. So yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else have some comments on inclusion?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I already spoke.
Thanks. I'm Heather. I'm representing the Gen Z here. And Hortense, I just wanted to go off of what you said, because I totally agree with what you say, and I know we're totally different generations, but to me, teamwork is the most important part of, just starting a career, and that's where I'm at. I'm 2 months into my career with NASA, and I've still got 2 more semesters left in college, so I'm still, halfway there. But yeah, I think teamwork and just making everybody feel inclusive, especially in this environment, the virtual environment, it's been really hard just learning about everyone that's in my little group right now. And I'm, struggling to still get to know everyone. And so even just being invited to meetings that everyone else is in is a really big part of me feeling included in my new career and just trying to learn about everyone else. So I think that's a really great point you made about teamwork and making sure everybody feels included there.
More excellent, good points. So for the crowd out there watching us, my system's running just a little bit slow. So if you see some hiccups, that's what's going on. We're trying to work through it. Virtual environments, here we are. This is what we're doing. Gotta love it. Hey, Sam, I'd like to hear your thoughts on inclusion. Would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. I also want to add on to what Heather was talking about in terms of just being invited to meetings. I'm also in the Gen Z bracket, and I just started my internship as a Pathways intern this past year. And so to give you an example, so I'm in GG, and I'm in the Project Resource Management Office, and we support the Engineering Directorate. And although we're not engineers, NE is really good about inviting us to the different social events they have, the different meetings that they have, and it really resonates with me personally because my generation is all about impact. And so being able to see different conversations and progress that these engineers have made through the help of our team, the budget analysts, resource analysts, is really important to me. And I think NASA does a really great job of not only making their interns feel included, but seeing the bigger picture of the work that's being done.
Yeah, fantastic. And I like where that conversation is going, because I think this can transition to this next question I'd like to bring up, talking about generational stereotypes. So what are, in your opinions, from what you've experienced in your careers, what are some of those generational stereotypes or misconceptions that you've experienced or seen? How did it make you feel? How did you respond, positively or negatively? And did you learn anything from that situation? And I'm opening it up to anyone.
I'll go ahead and take that one first, Dustin. So I think just from like a millennial perspective, and this might kind of pour over too with the Gen Zs, but it's either that you are new, so you don't know anything, or you see these like crazy articles where it's like, NASA intern on first day debunks that there's a planet or whatever it is. And so you either feel like you aren't able to be there because you don't know anything and you're kind of like being kind of fraudulent, or you feel like you have to know everything, and if you're not performing at that peak level, then maybe you're not doing it correctly. So I think that's definitely one that I'd say I feel from my perspective. And then just for some of the other generations, maybe it's that and I don't think these are all true. These are just ones that I'm putting out there, so don't come for me, people. But it's just like maybe not as open to change, like their way is the correct way to doing it because they've done it that way, or even having some of the issues with the technology and maybe not wanting to adapt some new programs are kind of like big ones that stand out to me.
You mentioned technology, and whenever we first all logged in, we were talking about that, how you've kind of gotten pulled into this kind of tech role, and people are asking about technology. What can you share about that situation? Anything you've learned or anything you can take away from that?
I kind of joke about it because I'm like, working from home, Teams has become like job security for me, because I know that if there's something that needs to be done on Teams, like I'm going to get a call about it, which is also kind of just, it's silly because I know there's plenty of people on my team who are very good at Teams too, but I love that role for me. So I've really jumped right into it. But I think it's just, this is, especially in the virtual environment, we're doing so much more from the computer than we ever have before. And I mean, we were completely on Skype before this. We weren't even using Teams. So that was in its own a big change. And so I just have been called upon a lot. It's usually that people know what they're doing. You just kind of have to like let them know where the buttons are. There's a lot going on in their day, and they might not have time to sit there for an hour and play around with Teams. I like doing stuff like that, so I will kind of just play around with it. Also, I'm a big believer in I don't know everything, but Google does. So I will get on Google and find out how to do it for you. But so I think it's just, becoming adaptive to the program and just really having to spend some time with it, and then just walking others through if they need it.
Would you say you've done any reverse mentoring on the technology side? Have you helped other generations?
Probably, yeah. Whenever we get, I feel like I'm always the first one when we get a new feature with Teams. I got to tell everyone about it. Like we recently got the ability to do the emojis. I was really excited. So I do think I kind of take on that role. I like Teams a lot. I think it's fun. When you're stuck at home and you're very social like me, I really look for any way to talk to people. So if you are in my Teams contact list, I am chatting you up all day long or calling you. I've got the camera on. I just like to see people. And since we're not getting to do that as much, I really take advantage of Teams.
Dara, do you have any thoughts about generational stereotypes, misconceptions?
Hi there. I think that the thing to add on to what Allison was saying about technology, I think that's a common one that people feel is a stereotype, that people need help or looking for different points of view and resources. And I love that resource. I love the fact that I myself have reached out to some younger people with technological questions, and the fact that it's a totally different perspective, and sometimes just can point you in the direction to find it out yourself and open up a whole new world to be able to explore things that I may or may not be so comfortable with at the time. I think that's probably the most prevalent type of stereotype that I feel, but just the point of view of different people and bringing that together to be able to help me in day-to-day workplace. If I have a question, thinking like who might be the best resource for finding that information. Sometimes you don't know the right person to go to, and sometimes people's different perspective, even on answering a question, can open up your eyes to the fact that people have such different points of view. And I've had that surprise me sometimes when I'm looking for an answer in something that comes up in day-to-day work. So I just can't stress that I do think that what everyone brings in to the table for technology, but also just day-to-day operations, really helps us all to be included. It ties into inclusion, what you were just saying, but I was just thinking about how that's such a great workplace to bring everyone into the picture and get the different points of view.
So Dustin, this is Hortense, and I just want to say, I don't want to speak for everybody in my generation, but I can definitely be technology challenged. But I am an embracer. I love technology, so I'm smiling when Allison's talking because she knows I'm called, hey kid, So I am definitely reaching out and making sure that I am making sure the team we're doing things that have us use technology. I may not be leading it. I may not even know how to do it, but I am a embracer of it, and I learn, to be honest, the minimum of what I have to learn to do it. Because, you guys, the younger generations, you've grown up with technology just forever changing. I mean, you get a phone today and next week it's outdated. There's something new coming along that does something greater and better. Well, I grew up where the phone was in the kitchen on the wall, and it didn't change my whole time at home. So I'm a little slow to not to accepting, but to doing the technology, but I'm definitely quick to embracing it. And again, I don't want to put that on my whole generation, because I know there are some folk out there in my generation that are doing way more than embracing it. They are out there leading it and understand every aspect of it, but not me.
Thanks for that, Hortense. And you're absolutely right. These generational these notions or stereotypes, it's not a one size fit all. So there are aspects of these generations that don't follow these norms that we talked about. So thank you for that,
Yes.
that input. And you mentioned something about communication, and that flows really well into this next question we have. And we actually have a question from YouTube that I'll loop into this same question. How has communication evolved during your career? Do you tailor your communication style when working with different generations? And along with that, what is your preferred communication medium? Text, email, face-to-face, etc.
Oh, I think communication has changed so much over the years that I've been in the workforce. I mean, it was pen and pencil, and computers came about, and email was a thing, and then faxes was the way you communicated the fastest. Then we still use email a great deal, but then it started with text, and now even Messenger is a way to communicate. And so all these different things have come about very quickly, for some of them over the years, but realize that even just within a few years, the text and Messenger have become a way that we communicate even in the workplace, and now Teams and all the virtual applications that we're using. But, I remember when fax was, the fastest way to get something to someone, and now everything's electronic. And if you fax something, someone thinks you're a dinosaur. So and that's happened very fast, but it's made it so much easier to communicate. It's really made it instant, which is far better in many cases and has helped us in so many ways. And so I embrace that really and try to keep up with it and communicate in all those different ways.
And I know here at NASA we're unique in some ways because we're just surrounded by technology, so we're kind of forced into using these things. Do you personally have a preferred style of communicating? Is it email? Is it phone calls? Is it face to face?
Well, me personally, I think it's probably phone call or or just speaking to the person is the quickest, I think. Actually, that's not true. Text is probably the quickest if you really need an answer right away. But in calling someone is like, instead of going back and forth in the text, you speak to them. I mean, calling them on Teams is what I really end up doing now in this virtual environment. So that's kind of just even quicker than anything. And I think that at this point, I'd say I prefer that, just to be able to get an answer and then follow up. Then you got to follow up with email to make sure everybody else who needs to know you're communicating that information. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Dara. I think, Barbara, you had some comments?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love what you said there. And here's one of the big takeaways that I've had. I've spent the last couple of months really learning and understanding different communication styles. And one of the big takeaways is we hear this golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. And I'm going to disagree with that. I'm going to say treat people the way they want to be treated. And this goes straight into communication communicate with people the way they want to be communicated with. And when we start to do that, when we start to understand how other people want to be communicated with, and we start understanding how to communicate in that way, we become the most effective communicators that we can be. And when we get back to these teams that Hortense was talking about earlier, when we all understand the various communication methods, right, whether that's text, email, chat, depending on who we're dealing with or who we're trying to reach and what we're trying to gain from that, if we know, hey, if I'm going to have a serious conversation with Dara, I'm going to give her a call. If I want to have a serious conversation with Allison, I'm going to shoot her a message on Teams, and that's probably going to be a video chat. Maybe that's an email to Hortense, and with the badging office, that's probably a fax still.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That's true. No, they do take it electronically now. I do email them.
They do, yeah. That's been a change since I've been here in the last few years, and one of those shocking moments of my career. But yeah, so that's one of the things that I've taken away in the last few months. I'm just going to repeat that one more time. Communicate with people the way they want to be communicated with. And in that moment, we all have better communication. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, and that shows a level of emotional intelligence that if we can get to, understanding other people's communication styles, that goes back to one of those slides I showed. It reduces misunderstandings and just helps us all, get to that level of understanding so we can accomplish our mission. So thank you for those comments. I think, Nicole, you had some comments you'd like to share.
Yes. I'm part of the Xennials, so I'm in between, both the Gen X and Millennials. And gotcha. We tend to be in the middle of all this. Mm-hmm. So often I'll have to use more formal styles of communication with the older generations and more informal with the younger ones. And I've had to learn to be very comfortable in both. So whether it's phone calls, face-to-face meetings, formal emails, or whether it's texting and speaking in memes, I've had to learn all of that. And now, personally, I'm a texter. That's my communication style. But I've had people, that prefer me calling them in Teams, that prefer me picking up the phone, and whether that's my comfort zone or not, that's what I've had to learn. And it's been a little challenge at sometimes, but it's also helped me grow, helped me learn how to better my communication skills. And I think that being able to communicate across generations does require that we have to have that flexibility and to be able to really step into, as Barbara said, step into what other people are comfortable with.
And Dustin, if you don't mind, I'm just going to follow up on that.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to circle back to with what Barbara said. Like, if I could get that written on a T-shirt, that is so important with communication. And I think that there's just nothing wrong with being very blunt and asking, because I mean, you can assume after you've had a couple conversations with people what they might prefer, but you don't know for sure. So just say, we're going to be working together on this project. What are you going to feel the most comfortable with? How can I reach you? Because they are not going to communicate with you. Even if they have a great idea, they might not feel like saying it if they don't feel like you're reaching them on their level. So it's just about being flexible and very direct. And I know for me, at least, like, I'm a very loud person, but directness can be kind of hard for me. So that's been something I've had to work on a lot. But it's like, no one's going to think I'm weird if I just like directly ask them this question, because that's the only way I'm going to get an answer. And so I think that's just like such a big takeaway with communication.
Yeah.
Great points.
Allison, I definitely agree with that. Barbara brings a great point up, because sometimes people can't hear you if you're not communicating to them in a manner that they need to. Sometimes it's not even a want. They need to be communicated in a certain way in order to grasp whatever it is that you're trying to relate to them. I am naturally want to do a face-to-face conversation. That's just naturally me. That is one of the things I really miss about being at work, is getting up from my desk and going to see someone, but now do these team drop-ins. And I just prefer face-to-face, because for me, communication is not just about having a dialogue. It's the facial expressions, and all of that is important for me to know that I am getting the message over that I'm trying to communicate. So that's just my normal method, and I definitely tell people how not to communicate with me. We have this thing now on Teams with the chat. I like, don't put me nothing in the chat. I have too much. I got email, I got text. I mean, I'm in communication overload, because I like to do it face to face. So if you want me to see something, don't put it in the chat. If you email it to me or text me, yes. But that chat thing, that's just too much for me. I'm in a meeting, people trying to chat. I'm like, too much.
So I experienced this as well. The challenge of explaining things across generations. And one of the things that I've had to do in this virtual environment is try to figure out how to do this stuff virtually. And we figured it out, and we had this concept. Wayne and I and several others worked out what we're doing right now. But trying to explain it to folks verbally wasn't the best way to do it for some folks. So I had to develop, not had to, but I developed a graphic visually describing exactly what we're doing right now in this virtual environment. And so I adapted how I was trying to explain things so I could, convey the message accurately and properly. So yeah, I agree. I know I change my communication styles when I need to. So good points here. So I'm going to slide into a new question. This is Safety and Health Day, so we're going to have some safety questions here. This question for anybody. At KSC, we want everyone to speak up when they see something unsafe. Have you noticed or experienced barriers that keep people from speaking up from a generational perspective?
Yeah. So I would love to start off on this one, and the answer is absolutely I have. And I have a few tips here. Know who's in charge of your workforce. So know who is in charge of your area's workforce, health, safety, and comfort, right? So in NE, that's Becky Murray. I've just transferred to SI. I've been communicating with Nancy directly, and I'm sure there's somebody there. I'm not sure who it is in PX. For the center as a whole, Calvin Manning is there and ready to talk to us as we work through these, these health and safety conversations. And that includes mental health, right? So if you are coming in to work every day and you are miserable, you need to know who to reach out to, how to reach out. And I'll throw this out there personally, feel free to reach out and I'll help you find who that is in your organization if you're afraid to reach out and reach up. I found myself in a similar situation where I tried to reach out, tried to reach up, it got shut down, and it shouldn't have, okay? So know that we're here for you, know that there are organizations, the majority of organizations at KSC and NASA are healthy, wonderful places to work, and that there is a whole workforce of people people that wants to be there for you, be there with you, help you grow, and join behind this NASA mission, right? So yes, I have noticed that. Yes, I have experienced that. And please try not to internalize that and reach out to folks that can and want to help. Thank you.
I'll throw some more out there too, if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Mostly what I've seen have been more internal barriers, especially with our generation and younger seems to struggle a lot with anxiety and worry about, are we going to be taken seriously? Are we going to be retaliated against? How will the concerns and questions we raise impact our future career? Things like that, whether they're founded or not. And I would say that having great supervisors and a great team around you really helps that. People that take you seriously will definitely encourage speaking up. I also, I know we have some great resources here. The hotlines, Bob Cabana's AMA, things like that have been very, very helpful for people speaking up. And so I do think this is a really good, a good place for us to be able to bring up safety concerns. We just need to, at least for speaking for my area, at least need to get over our internal things that may hold us back.
Excellent. So, Sarah, you're from this, you and Nicole you've identified with the same generation. So I'd like to get your perspective on seeing barriers for speaking up for safety. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
I can pretty much, I agree with what she was saying. A lot of barriers that I've seen is a lot of times internal, and it's not just for young generations. I feel like it's for older generations, my generation. I think everyone has that fear of what type of repercussions could happen, or whether you'll get looked down upon, or if you come out and say something. And I know in the program that I work on, there's always a lot of talks and management, and they always ensure that they support your decisions, because we work on launch campaigns. They're always telling us, if you see something that's not right, if you're unsure, we will support you 100%. And I think that's very important to have, that backing from management, to let you know that, they trust in you and they believe in your expertise.
Great points. And a follow-on question: Do you feel encouraged to report safety concerns?
I do. I feel like I work in a safe environment where where my opinions and what I see will be taken serious. It's just internally, I always do have a fear, like, what I see is there really a concern? But, in the environment that we work at, I feel like it's safer to ask a question, to come out and say, hey, is this how it should be, rather than not say something, because the results could be catastrophic, depending on where you work.
And I'll add, Dustin, I'll out myself. I have had an embarrassing safety situation, and I did have to report it, and not fun. I didn't want to. I made a silly mistake. Would have preferred to have kept it to myself. Didn't really need everyone knowing about it. But it escalated. I did have to say something about it, and absolutely no one gave me any grief about it. No one made me feel as silly as I made feel myself. All of that is usually internal anyway. And I actually learned a lot from it, because I probably would have made the same mistake again, because it was about electricity and wiring, and I just didn't know, beforehand. So I think it's very important to say something, and no one's going to make you feel embarrassed about it. That's all on you. You're making yourself feel embarrassed. So just say something, and you might learn something along the way. And just slow down and take your time with things, because that's how safety issues arise in the first place a lot of times.
Absolutely. We probably all heard these comments about back in shuttle, we used to do this, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to hear from either Heather or Samantha, or both of you. What are your perspectives on speaking up when you see something unsafe? Because there has been obviously a history with safety issues, not issues, I don't want to make that sound bad, but we've had some issues happen. So I'm curious from your perspective what you think about reporting safety issues.
Well, yeah, that's a great question, Dustin. Personally, I mean, I've only been here 2 months, but I have been lucky enough to go out and see working with with flight hardware and just being able to see how the processes work and everything. And it's been really interesting to me so far. And I've always been encouraged by my supervisor and my mentors and anybody else in my group to be able to speak up and say that if I see anything that's iffy, but I have yet to see anything because I know safety is NASA's #1 core value. So I know everyone that's working on those projects, that's their #1 goal. So I haven't really seen any sort of issues and concerns about safety because every time I go somewhere, they're like, okay, they have a briefing and they have somebody say, okay, if you're going to get within 20 feet, you need to be wearing a hard hat, something like that. So it's been really great to see that and people concerned about those safety issues.
Yeah, that is good to hear, especially someone as fresh as you, a couple months, right off the bat, you're getting hit with, hey, we need to be safe here. Where's your hard hat? That kind of stuff. That's actually very, very good to hear.
Yeah.
Heather, do you have anything? I'm sorry, Samantha, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I can just echo what Heather said as well. So since I'm new, I haven't really seen anything or experienced anything personally, but I think having leadership simply just say, like, we're here for you and we're open to these kind of conversations is really important because although I haven't seen anything yet, if it comes to a point where I feel like I need to say something, then I know that these people will embrace me and that my opinion will be valued ultimately.
Excellent. Dara or Hortense, from your perspective, hearing our fresh faces say these things, what are your thoughts? What's your outlook?
So, Dustin, I am very glad to hear that all of the ladies on this panel feel like they could speak up and be heard if they saw something that they needed to bring to the attention of someone because of safety. What I will say, one of the things you ask is what are barriers to that? I'm going to go back to our core values. I think people will be reluctant and not so willing to share if, number one, they don't feel valued and they don't feel included. That can be a barrier. So the fact that you all are saying that you don't think you have any barriers, I think it's just great for NASA and NASA's future, where more and more of our workforce is feeling like they're included and valued. Because if I don't, then I'm second guessing. I'm like, is Dustin going to hear me? He doesn't even look at me. He doesn't even know my name, and I don't want to rock the boat because I'm not sure. Because a lot of times when you're talking about bringing up safety concerns or any concerns for that matter, you may not be 100% sure of what you're bringing up even needs to be addressed. You just kind of got this, I'm not feeling quite right about that. I need to talk to someone. But if you got this fear of not being valued or being made fun of or not being included, and now this makes you look bad in some way, you will not have that conversation. So I just believe we have to do a great job of making sure everyone on the team feels valued and included so that they won't have those barriers.
Great points on barriers, Hortense.
And I totally agree with what you're saying, Hortense, and I think, I feel in my generation, it's more of a rule following thing. You need to follow the rules and report whatever you see or say something, and I think it is.
You're muted.
Hey, Dara, I think we lost your audio. Dara, are you muted? Can you hear us?
Did you hear anything that I said?
There we go. Yeah, you cut off about halfway. Now we hear you.
Anyway, I was saying that I think my generation more of follows the rule following, where you would do it no matter what. But I do think it's wonderful that we're hearing that you all would feel, over the different generations, feel comfortable in speaking up and saying something, because the see something, say something is so important. And as Hortense said, sometimes you don't even realize that it could be something wrong. It's just a feeling that, hey, this is not right, and I may not know that what this would affect. So let me communicate it. And I think that we should always be in an environment, and we do foster that here to encourage people to speak up. So I think that's very important.
Thank you, Dara. So we've got, we're getting close to the end here. So we got a couple more questions we'll get to. This next one, I think we've kind of danced around it. We've kind of touched on some of this, but I'm going to ask it, and maybe we can expound upon it just a little bit. We all know that listening leads to understanding. And so with that in mind, how do you approach understanding the perspectives from fellow employees from across the generations? Is there anything specific that you try to do yourself to help connect with generations that aren't yours? And I'd like to hear from Sarah, if you don't mind.
I was just about to unmute.
Perfect.
So for me, I feel like empathy is really important because everyone comes from a different background, different perspective. And, you know, in order to be able to communicate effectively with someone, you have to understand where they come from, what issues they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, or what their background is. And so when I approach someone, I usually approach them trying to seek to understand, to see, you know, what it is that, you know, even if it's as simple as what type of communication they like better. You know, some people like to text better. For me, I like to go talk to them face to face. Whatever it may be, some people like to have everything written down in like an email. Some people like it straight up, you know, just tell me the facts, and that's how it is. So I think that's really important, you know, speaking to understand and trying to empathize with them to understand them better. Thank you.
Great points.
I'd like to follow on to that if you...
Please.
Yeah, okay. So I remember, I mean, she talks about communication, which is obviously really important in understanding each other's generations. But personally, you know, being new to NASA, acronyms has been a huge challenge, and I'm sure all of you know that. So, you know, speaking and being in these meetings where people have been here for 10, 15 years and they've been doing these processes with all these acronyms, that's the biggest challenge for me, is acronyms and knowing exactly what everyone's talking about at that moment. So I think the way I try to deal with that is obviously just writing them down and trying to look them up later, or ask my mentor, and just, or maybe even just send it in the chat. I know, Hortense, you don't like that, but sometimes I do get a response, sometimes I don't, and then I'll just go and look it up myself. But that's personally been one of the biggest, like, generational things, is they're just, you know, they know exactly what acronyms mean, but me coming in, they can just talk a whole sentence in acronyms, and I have to go and look up every single one because I didn't understand a word in that sentence. So I think that's my personal understanding older generations here at NASA.
Excellent points. I agree. When I came aboard, even though I'm a military guy and we live in acronyms on that side, when I got to NASA, it just opened up a whole new bag of worms on the alphabet soup that we deal with. So great points. Thank you for that.
I wanted to hop in there for just a second too.
Please.
Heather, definitely hold on to that, right? So I remember that feeling as well, and hold on to that throughout your career, because even changing from, I see that, well, it says, I think you said GG maybe, when you go into engineering or when you're working with PX, right, those acronyms are different. So the more that we build it into our system to spell those out, the better. And I had another point and I lost it entirely. So yeah, that was definitely work on spelling out those acronyms. It's great as well for these moments when we're speaking out towards the rest of KSC, and then as we do public speaking as well, because the public really doesn't know our acronyms, right? If we say SLS, they're like, okay, right? So we need to say Space Launch Systems and really work on that type of communication. So yeah.
And Heather, the good news is once you learn all the acronyms, they'll change. So it'll be the same thing with a different one.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
wanted to add too as well that it's just important to remember that hearing is different than listening. You have to really be actively engaging to listen to hear someone else. And I think a really great way to do that is just kind of regurgitating what they're saying to you. I find that is very helpful. One, it validates that they know I heard them. They know I understand them. They know that, I understand they're feeling X, Y, or Z about what they just said. And then it also helps for me because now I've said it again. So my mental brain is putting it, cataloging it there as well. So that was just a big listening tip, I guess, that I would share.
I'll throw one in as well. Open-ended questions. That's my biggest listening tip, because a lot of times we have assumptions that we'll go into a conversation with, and we think we know where someone's coming from, but if we actually give them the chance to explain, then it may be something completely different. And so I try to ask questions that allow them to be the one to explain, and then ask follow-on questions after that. A lot of whys, a lot of, what do you mean by that? Things like that will really help the listening and help the chance to really understand where people are coming from.
Any other comments? I hear nothing, which is okay. That signals to me that we can go ahead and start closing this up. We're right on time. I would like to open up the floor for any final comments by anyone. You don't have to, but if there are any final thoughts you'd like to give the audience, please feel free to speak up.
Sure, I'll pop in there for a second. Just a couple takeaways. If you're struggling to communicate, when I'm struggling to communicate across the generations or across a team, I look for someone who's doing that effectively in that team and reach out to that person. What tools are you using? What insights can you give me? And sometimes there's personal insights on people on the team. Sometimes there's great tools, tips, and tricks, and not all of them are going to work for all of us. Anytime somebody shares a tool with us, we don't have to implement them all, right? And generally, it will very much help in the way that we communicate. And the second thing is get a mentor, right? Reverse mentoring, straightforward mentoring, get a mentor and ask how they have bridged the communication and gotten to where they are in their career. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dustin. I very much enjoyed participating in this panel today and hope to do this again in the future.
You're welcome.
Hey, I just wanted to add that the thing that I keep in mind the most is that everybody has a story, and getting to know people and finding out things about them helps immensely in communicating and building a relationship and just connecting with that person and realizing the way you can work together. And that's what I try to think of as I go and interact with people.
Good points.
And I'll add, get outside of your own head. I know that I do that a lot, and that can be a barrier of communication as well. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, my personality is big, and it is this 100% of the time. There's no like work Allison versus outside of work Allison. And so sometimes I like say or do things, and I'm like, ooh, was that weird? Like, I don't know. And it's just like getting outside of your head. My coworkers are not thinking about the things I've said and done as much as I'm thinking about them. So it's just, don't let you hold yourself back in communicating, because you won't be able to make those relationships moving forward. And thank you for having me.
Hortense, did I see you coming on? Did you have something to say? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I didn't, but I will say that in this new work life that we're doing now, this is a good time to develop new ways of communicating, because we had to. Just like we had to develop new ways of getting our jobs done. We had to. I've become much better at texting than I had in the past, but I am glad it's got the little microphone where I can speak it instead of type it. But this is just, take advantage of this time and maybe adapt your communication preference and style, because you don't want to be left out of the communication, because we all now have had to change. So just be willing to lean forward and make some changes if you have to. I mean, I think that's important that we do that. I've enjoyed being on this panel. When Women's History Month with you great ladies. I really appreciate it. And I just want to remind everybody, I know, we're talking about Women's History Month and recognizing the great things that women do, and we have a lot of women at NASA that are doing a lot of great things. A lot of women whose shoulders we stand on, who've done great things. But I just want to remind everybody out there that your mom is a woman too. And I know we have Mother's Day, but your mom is a woman too. Just remember that. Wish your mom a happy Women's Month.
That's an amazing message, Hortense. Thank you for that. I'm going to call my mother right after this and do exactly that. So thank you for that. So that is all the time we have today. I want to respect everyone's time, and so I'm going to go ahead and close this up. I would like to thank the panelists once again for this great discussion on generational perspectives. I know I learned a lot, got some great insights from all of you, and I hope the audience did as well. I do have a few more items to share here. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm going to ask Heidi or Larry, and I'm not sure which one, I apologize, to come up on screen and tell us about this contest that we have.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about the contest. Do you have the chart? So we have the NASA Exchange is sponsoring our, they're doing a drawing, and so they've given discount codes for everyone that participates in our drawings this year. So if you want to enter the drawing, you can email the word inclusion to ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov, and you'll be entered to win a discount code for a purchase at mynasastore.com.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Make sure you get that email in so you can have a chance to get that discount code. So to close out the program, I would like to invite everyone to our final Safety and Health Days event of 2021 that will happen next week when we have Dr. Amanda Goodson online to talk to us about influential team building. That should be a good discussion, and I am certainly looking forward to it. Again, that will be our final one, and it's next week. Check the communicator. You can find all the details. Again, thank you, ladies, for your time. Thank you to the No ERG for helping arrange today's panel, and thank you, everyone in the audience, for tuning in today. Hope to see you virtually at our next and final Safety Health Days event. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.